While shadow people make up the most common sleep paralysis demons, there's one shadow
Hang on a second.
in particular who stands above the rest. He is called the Man in the Hat.
Let me pause this.
A shadow person that wears a wide-brimmed hat.
Okay, technical difficulties right off the bat. So yeah, as I was going to mention, this will be good evening, everyone. Let's start off with that, and welcome to episode 30 of Nightmare Theater, an open book club for nightmares. And as you can see, there's something a bit special planned for today. So it's the last presentation that I was planning to do for a while, because I used to, especially when I started this show, before I did the interviews, and before I just read, the nightmares from Reddit, I would also give a presentation on some topic related to nightmares. And I thought that I wanted to kind of retire that for the time being, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of end with a bit of a special episode. So we're going to look at, I had on my TikTok gone through a list of sleep paralysis demons, and I amassed a list of about 34 different ones that I was seeing commonly, and also that people were telling me about in the community. So I thought it'd be fun to go through and rank them according to how scary they are. So we'll look at the TikTok, and then together I would love for you to shout out the name of the demon and then where you think it should rank. So a bit of a fun episode tonight. It'll also be the most technically challenging thing I've ever done in OBS, as you've already seen. I was off to a bit of a bad start there, but yeah, just bear with me. And we should have a lot of fun tonight. So yeah, no, this needs to be down here, just like I practiced. Perfect. So, all right, I hope that you can see this all right. Let me know if everything isn't looking good, but I think that it is, or it ought to be. Okay, so let me back this up. And also, let's make sure that we can hear the video. So this is how this is going to work. I have a picture here that kind of in the middle of the screen that corresponds to. We're going to learn about these demons one by one, and then I'm going to rank them on the chart up here. Okay, it's a bit of a complicated setup, but it's going to be good. Hello everyone, welcome. Okay, so here we go.
While shadow people make up the most common sleep paralysis demons, there's one shadow person in particular who stands above the rest. He's called the Man in the Hat. He's described as a shadow person that wears a wide-brimmed hat, sometimes a trench coat, and sometimes has red eyes. There are accounts of the Man in the Hat appearing in sleep paralysis for individuals all over the world from different cultures. People who've seen him say he's distinctly more terrifying than other shadow people, and he has a real sense of malice to him that the others don't. When other shadow people would have faded away, the Man in the Hat sticks around a little longer, lengthening the sleep paralysis. And when he finally leaves, rather than vanishing like other shadow people, he turns and walks away, or floats away. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check out my YouTube.
Okay, we don't need to play the, we don't need to play my little plug at the end of each video. So, okay, so Man in the Hat. This, again, as was said in the TikTok, has been had by many people, many people have experienced seeing the Man in the Hat, and they all report him as being one of the most terrifying experiences of their entire lives. So I think for that reason, I would have to put Man in the Hat in the S tier. If there are any objections, feel free to shout that in the chat, and I'll take them all into consideration. I think that it would be fun if we build this tier list together. And hello from Reddit. Glad to have found you, mate. Awesome. Glad you're here. Let's go to the next one.
In Russian folklore, the Kikimora is an old woman spirit that inhabits the house. Some of them are thought to be good, while others are more malevolent. While inhabiting a house, the Kikimora lives either behind the stove or in the cellar. She might help with household chores, but she will also steal food. At night, as you sleep, she is said to enter through the keyhole of your door and sit on your chest. Once seated, she may try to strangle you. If while in sleep paralysis, a child saw the Kikimora, they were advised to look at the window or the pillow, not to make eye contact with her, and to try to make the sign of the cross. Other ways of repelling her include leaving a broom upside down behind the door, leaving a belt on top of your sheets, or saying an elaborate prayer before bed. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check.
Alright, so the Kikimora. This one, like, we could weigh the pros and cons, right? You would think that because she's a real entity, that kind of puts her higher up on the list. So she's not just a sleep paralysis demon. She also, frightens children. She also, she's just known to be a real thing. But then also, because she's a real thing rather than just a sleep paralysis demon, or rather, because she's a folklore monster rather than just a sleep paralysis demon, she has these measures to counteract her advances, right? So you can, like, put the broom on your door. You can actually do things to prevent her from getting you. So I think these things kind of balance out, and we can put her in a B tier. Maybe like A because of the realism, and then C because of the the ways of dealing with her. So overall, I think she's a B tier. In terms of scariness, I should say. That's how we're ranking this. How do I... There it is.
The Jinn is a Turkish sleep paralysis demon. Like many other sleep paralysis demons, it's supernatural and comes into one's room as they sleep, holds the victim down so as not to allow any movement, and begins strangling them. In some stories of the Jinn, it's seen wearing a wide-brimmed hat, similar to that worn by the man in the hat. However, if the person being tormented by the Jinn can manage to steal his hat, then the Jinn will become his slave. What you would even do with a sleep paralysis demon that you enslaved, I don't know. For more nightmares and
scares, I cut that off a bit early, sorry. Anyway, so yeah, that's a bit interesting, right? So it's typical sleep paralysis demon, except there's this whole other feature where you can actually enslave the demon and have it grant your wishes, sort of like a Jinn, GD Jinn. I think for this coolness factor, I think in terms of scariness, I wouldn't rank it very high just in and of itself. But the fact that you can kind of capture it and, have it do your bidding, I'm going to give it, even though this is ranked by scariness, I think I'm going to give that a B tier just because there's that whole element of, well, how do I, get ahead of it? How do I, take charge of it? Which I find very interesting. I always find it hard to click this. There we go.
Sleep paralysis demon, the Pisadira, is a Brazilian urban legend. Pisadira, or she who steps, is an old, tall woman. She is skinny and has long, dirty fingernails, white, tangled hair, a long nose, and red eyes. She also has greenish teeth and an evil laugh, lives on the rooftops, and waits to step on the chest of anyone with a full stomach as they sleep. This could be related to the fact that if you eat a lot before bed, you tend to get more nightmares. More nightmares and scary stuff.
So again, this is kind of... You can see how the folklore element of the sleep paralysis demon kind of works its way into the story, right? So like these folklores are often, to scare children away from things that are harmful to them, or to prevent you from doing things that are generally like bad practices for your health. And in this case, you can kind of see how that is the case with the Pisadira, right? Because she's basically being used as a device to teach you not to eat before bed. Now, of course, like just the massive amount of folklore that, goes along with it is cool. And the idea of her jumping on the rooftops. But overall, I feel like there's nothing too unique about this sleep paralysis demon. And I might rate it a C tier. Is it weird to have seen the Hat Man outside of SP? I saw him for the first time at my old mentor's house while sitting on the couch. He was sitting next to me when I looked over, but vanished when I got up. I've actually heard of that before. Like, I had people like on my TikTok a lot of the time saying stuff like, oh, well, like, what if I see shadow people in real life? What if I see sleep paralysis demons in real life? And I was always like, I don't know. I don't know how to help you with that. It's that's a terrifying thought. You're not supposed to be able to do that. That's not supposed to happen. But I mean, again, they are hypnagogic hallucinations. So maybe if there's any other reason that you might have to hallucinate, you might see it. Like maybe you're just super tired or something of that nature. I don't know. Maybe you were taking something you shouldn't have been taking. I don't know. But yeah, possibility. Oops.
Batabat is a vengeful sleep paralysis demon in Ilocano folklore. It takes the form of an ancient, grossly obese, female-dwelling tree spirit. They are said to come into contact with humans after the tree in which they reside is felled. If that tree is then used as part of a house, the Batabat will follow what remains of its former home. The Batabat torments humans who sleep near its former home, or fragments of its former home. When a human does sleep in a home that was made partially from wood from the tree where a Batabat once lived, it begins to torment them in sleep. It turns into its true form and invades their dream space, suffocating them and causing them sleep paralysis, as well as waking nightmares. The only way to ward off the Batabat is to avoid the house or to wake up. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check it.
So again, we have a case of, first of all, I gotta say, the unique flavor of the description for the Batabat, the fact that it's just kind of an obese, tree spirit. It's that kind of differentiates it for me from other sleep paralysis demons. I also really like this image here that you see in the middle. That's kind of creepy. Like if you imagine that thing waking you up in the middle of the night. But I can't really give too much points to the images because obviously these are just different artists' renditions, and it's not fair to the sleep paralysis demons to judge them based off of one bad picture or one good picture. But the other thing that I would say here is, again, the fact that it can be avoided has to have it lose some points. So, because you can always just avoid using a tree, sleeping in a bed next to where there was a felled wood or something like that, So I would say overall this would also get a B tier in terms of overall scariness.
One of the most common shadow people's sleep paralysis demons is known as the hooded figure. Like the man in the hat, his face is never quite visible, although in this case it's because it's shrouded by a hood. The hooded figure stands in the corner of the room and simply watches you. Another variation of the hooded figure is called the whistling man. While watching you, the hooded whistling man whistles a haunting melody. People describe the melody as being a song that they had heard before, but forgotten, and can't put their finger on. Something from childhood, or something that they were always supposed to know. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check out...
Okay, so the hooded figure is pretty much the most common sleep paralysis demon. You hear people report this one most of the time, something emerging from the corner of the room, and then just slowly walking over to you, and they're wearing a hood. Now, this additional whistling feature, I would say, adds to the creepiness. And I don't know if everyone who experiences the hooded figure experiences the whistling, but often you will be accompanied by some auditory hypnagogic hallucinations. And again, just because so many people have had this one, I feel like I don't want to belittle it. I feel like we should put it at least in A tier, but it has to stay below Man in the Hat. I don't think we can call it put it on the top tier. But yeah, just so many people have had the hooded figure. It's done so much damage to so many people's waking up and so many people's falling asleep that, yeah, I think it deserves A tier for those reasons.
The Chomper is a sleep paralysis demon that appears at first to be an ordinary man, but as he steps out of the corner of your room and towards your bed, you realize that he has a large, pronounced jaw. Sometimes the jaw even appears to be made out of metal. It is said that he approaches you, leans down over you in your bed, and then starts biting down on your ribs, making it hard to breathe and causing you pain. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Okay. So this one, I think, is going to be rated pretty highly because not only is it just the fearfulness of seeing the visual hallucination, but you're also dealing with, a kinesthetic hallucination of the sensation of this creature biting down on your rib cage. So, yeah, I think I would probably give that an A tier. The Chomper.
The Gremlin is a sleep paralysis demon that resembles a gargoyle and has a snake-like tongue. can climb the walls to stare at you from the ceiling, and it's known to sometimes speak to you in a strange demonic language. Cuddler is a sleep paralysis demon that no one has ever...
Okay. That seems like that was corrupted or something, that file. Not really sure, sorry about that. But yeah, I think that what it was going to say is he speaks to you in a strange demonic language, which is certainly creepy. Also, the factor of it can crawl on the walls and ceiling, I think that that's also pretty creepy. But the size is not very imposing. It's kind of a smaller sleep paralysis demon. And also it doesn't really interact with you kinesthetically so much. So I would probably put this one as a B tier. The Gremlin.
While shadow people make up the most common in Russian folklore, the Jinn, sleep paralysis, Atabat, is one of the most Kachamber is the Gremlin. The Cuddler is a sleep paralysis demon that no one has ever seen. If you're lying on your side, you feel it crawl up behind you and wrap its bony arm around you. But of course, being paralyzed, you can't turn to look at it. It often feels cold and unpleasant, and it will often whisper to you in some unknown language. Some claim to have seen its arm, just reaching across their field of view, as if looking for something on the far side of the bed, but it keeps its body and face out of view. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check out...
the Cuddler. So this one was probably my most popular one on TikTok. But basically the way that the Cuddler works is you don't actually ever see it. Only sometimes will you see its arm. So for that reason, it's not so much a feeling of terror in the same way, because you don't see it like coming at you and approaching you. It's more of a when you're sleeping on your side type deal. So I would say for that reason, I would probably give it a C tier. It's not the scariest. Obviously, it's scary to realize there's someone behind you and you live alone, and especially if it's whispering to you, that would be creepy. But overall, it just doesn't have that terrifying presence that's just imposing on you. So yeah, C tier I think is probably about right.
The Shapeshifter is a sleep paralysis demon that can take on the form of a family member. If that family member lives with you, then this demon will often go unrecognized. It can be passive and believable. For example, your mother coming into your room to take a look in your laundry hamper. Other times, it seems more blatant, like the demon is trying to provoke you. It might take on the form of a family member who's deceased or lives in a different city. In some cases, it will even change its appearance in front of you from one family member to another, to a friend, to a monster. And of course, if it's a family member coming into your room to watch you in sleep paralysis, that's highly suspect as well. But if your family member comes into your room to watch you while you sleep, you may have bigger problems than the demon. For more nightmares and scary...
Alright, so obviously I'm being a bit of a jokester there. Yeah, so alright, it was also hard to get a picture for a shapeshifter, of course, but I just went with this kind of generic sleep paralysis demon image. So what I would say about this is just due to the fact, like, it's definitely a very interesting concept, right? Like, you could be looking at a sleep paralysis demon and not even realizing it, just lying there in sleep paralysis, and your mother comes into the room and doing your laundry. That was the example I gave. Or maybe it's, someone just chatting in the hall and you're trapped in the sleep paralysis, but that is actually the demon in the hall. It's not actually a family member having a chat. But overall, I think that the fact that it goes under the radar so often, unless it's a family member overtly looking at you, I would have to sort of average out that balance of experiences, and I would probably give it a C tier for the Shapeshifter.
The Old Hag is one of the oldest known sleep paralysis demons. Described as a grotesque old woman, she's one of the more aggressive sleep paralysis demons. The Scandinavian analog of the Old Hag, also known as the Mara, appears in some Norse sagas dating back to the 1100s. In the Ynglinga saga, there's an account of a Mara, or Old Hag, being summoned by a witch to carry out an assassination on a Swedish king. You heard me right. There are accounts from 900 years ago of this sleep paralysis demon killing people. Like many sleep paralysis demons, the old hag climbs atop your chest, making it hard to breathe and terrifying you. In the folklore of some cultures, she's described as a physical being, while in others, she's considered supernatural. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Okay. So I think this one probably has to go in S tier. The old hag is, again, one of the most common sleep paralysis demons. It's also historically extremely significant, especially if you watch some of my first, second, and third episodes. I talked about her, and as mentioned in the TikTok, there's literally accounts in historical sagas of this sleep paralysis demon being summoned by a witch to carry out an assassination. So the idea that a demon is actually capable of interacting with the physical world and killing you, that goes right into S tier, in my opinion. Feel free to disagree.
The Mirror Dweller is a sleep paralysis demon you'll only see if you sleep next to a mirror. While in sleep paralysis, as you glance over to your mirror, you may notice a figure in it, but it's hard to make it out. It looks like a human, but it's blurry. It doesn't help that often it's accompanied by a strange fog seeming to waft through your room. The Mirror Dweller has incredibly long arms, which he extends through the mirror into the real world. People report his long arms grabbing onto their legs and then dragging them out of bed towards the mirror. If he manages to get you all the way there, no one really knows what happens next. For more nightmares and scary.
Okay, so I personally have a fear of looking at myself in the mirror during the dark. That's from watching the movie Mirrors. I think I've mentioned that on the show many times before. But the fact that it requires a mirror to even get you. Now, I did used to sleep across from a mirror, and I would say that is a terrifying experience, but like any other, in any other case, you can turn the mirror around or you can put a cover over it. So the fact that you can kind of take steps to prevent it from even appearing in the first place, I think has to make it rank lower on the list. But when you do see it, I think that's just a really freaky thought, just to see something coming through the mirror like it's another world. So I think it doesn't deserve a D tier, but I would still put it in C just because it's so avoidable by changing your environment around a bit.
Some people see, if you're used to falling asleep with the TV on or laptop on, the masked man or masked lady. Some people see multiple shadow beings at once during sleep paralysis. They can be different shapes and sizes, and some can watch you while others will move around the room. Often, they'll whisper to you at a threshold that's slightly too hard to hear. The masked man or masked lady.
I don't know what's going on with the audio, but so the Shadow Gang is what this one was, and basically it's just multiple shadow beings. You're encountering them at once. And interestingly, when you hear people describe it, it's often less terrifying than a single shadow person. And the reason for that is because rather than interacting with you directly, when the shadow beings appear in groups, they tend to interact with each other. And it feels like you're almost part of someone else's social gathering. So I would actually say that the Shadow Gang is not a very scary sleep paralysis demon. And again, that might be controversial. By the way, I posted a link to this template in the description of the video, so you can feel free to make your own list if you like. But I'm going to rate the Shadow Gang as a D tier. I don't think it's that scary.
If you're used to falling asleep with the TV, the masked man or masked lady are different versions of the same sleep paralysis demon whose face is covered. These masked demons have extremely long fingernails that almost drag across the ground. They almost always approach you as you lie in your bed. Sometimes they'll drag their freakishly long fingernails across your body, scratching you. Sometimes they'll even push them through your skin, or at least they make it feel like that's what they're doing, puncturing your chest and whatnot. Other people report that the masked man will carry a sack. The sack contains your loved ones, who he pulls out one at a time and executes them in front of you, slitting their throats with his long nails. But from your paralysis, you're helpless only to watch. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Okay, so that's pretty creepy. I've actually heard of quite a few sleep paralysis demons with long fingernails, and you'll hear a few, that's kind of a common theme here. But that factor, I feel like, raises it a tier whenever there's a long fingernail demon, because that's just very uncomfortable. That coupled with the fact that it's puncturing through your chest, and that coupled with the fact that it can show your family members being executed, and certainly in this picture that looks really creepy, but that's, I don't think, what it's really supposed to look like. That was just the closest image I could find. I think overall I'd have to give the masked man or masked lady an A tier in terms of how scary it is.
If you're used to falling asleep with the TV on or laptop running, you might want to be wary of the static being. You might wake up in the middle of the night in sleep paralysis. Static on the TV screen. On the screen, something that looks similar to a human emerges and walks closer to you. You can't make out its face, but it watches you from the other side of the screen. Unlike the mirror dweller, the static being cannot leave its domain. Instead, it shows you images of yourself laying in bed, and all the ways it can torture you. As long as the duration of the paralysis lasts, it will continue showing you horrific images of both you and your family members at its mercy. For more nightmares and scary.
So that's definitely really freaky. It suffers the same problem as the mirror dweller, though. I think that in a way it's more creative than the mirror dweller, and there are probably more people who sleep with a TV next to them than there are people who sleep with a mirror facing them. So I think overall it suffers from some of the same drawbacks in that you can just not have a TV in your room. But I think that the creativity of the things that it shows you, just how like you're seeing yourself on the TV and it doing things to you in its dimension, I think that is creepy enough to put it in a B tier.
If you have pets that sleep in the bed with you, you may have encountered demon pets while in sleep paralysis. Demon pets look just like your pet, except they may have red eyes, and they'll be snarling or growling at you from the edge of the bed. Usually they don't attack you, but there have been reports of that. There have also been reports of their flesh peeling away and falling off, almost as though your pet is zombified. When you snap out of the paralysis, though, your pet will just be sleeping next to you normally, so you've got nothing to fear. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check out my YouTube.
Okay, so this is another scenario that's probably common, is a lot of people will have their pet sleeping in the bed with them. But I don't know if anybody else feels this, but I feel not that afraid of a non-humanoid for some reason. If it's just an animal that's kind of, I don't know, that just doesn't get me that much. And again, you can also have your pet not sleep in the bed, which can counteract it. I think I would put this even technically lower than the mirror dweller, personally. Now this might just be my opinion, but I wouldn't put it in D tier though. I do think it's still more scary than the Shadow Gang to realize there's some rabid animal with red eyes or whatever just wanting to eat you all of a sudden. But yeah, feel free to disagree.
Multi-Face is a robotic sleep paralysis demon. When the sleep paralysis begins, Multi-Face isn't normally in your room, but he'll walk in through the door. His head is like a block of TVs that turn on his neck to reveal new screens. Each time his face flips into a new screen, it shows you some new horrific imagery. It could be your family members imprisoned or dismembered, or some image depicting the void. Multi-Face will also show you non-horrific things, like the face of a friend or someone you know. This demon is one of those that doesn't really approach you, just watches you and shows you things. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check out.
Yeah, I gotta say, this one doesn't really scare me too much either. There are a lot of demons that show you things on a TV screen, or they show you things in one way or another. And I think that this is a less creative version than just the static being. At least to me, this doesn't do it as much. I do think it's scarier than demon pets. I think it's probably about on par with the mirror dweller. And again, just the fact that it's got a TV for a head, it doesn't really approach you. It doesn't come up with you, it doesn't interact with you, it just shows you things, and you can kind of probably look away, to be honest. There are much more horrific things, I would say. Maybe I'm picky because I've been doing this for a while. But yeah, I would give Multi-Face a C tier.
The Hangman has one of the most dramatic entrances of any sleep paralysis demon. You awake in paralysis in your room, and at first you think that you're not being watched by anyone. Suddenly, as if from the rafters, a man drops down. His neck snaps against a rope. His neck is clearly broken and he chokes there in the noose, staring at you with that horrified expression. After a short time watching you wide-eyed, the hangman will also begin to vomit blood and pus. It's an alarming sight to behold, but hey, at least he's not coming over to you. For more nightmares and scares...
Yeah, just as I said in the video there, at least he's not coming over to you. I don't doubt that this is probably one of the most shocking experiences, right? Because, you know, even in the case of the hooded figure, you're not seeing anything, and then you think you see something, and then you realize, oh my goodness, there's a person standing there. And they come over to you slowly, and then they, interact with you. And that's, the fear builds. Whereas with the hangman, it's just boom, all of a sudden falls out of the ceiling and making a lot of noise and, just thrashing around violently. So that shock factor, I do think, is worth something. But again, the fact that they are kind of in the predicament, not you, right? Like, they're the ones who are hung. Like, you're not. So, I mean, it can't really interact with you beyond that. So I would say for the shock factor, we can give it a B tier, but I wouldn't give it anything higher than that.
Some sleep paralysis demons aren't demons at all. The body bag is a prime example of this. You might awake in sleep paralysis, at first thinking everything's normal, and then look across the room to see a body bag. At first it won't move. It's just positioned against the wall. Next, it will start to tilt and then flop onto the floor. Whatever it contains begins writhing around on the ground, but you never get to see it. Some people will hear exasperated moaning or cries of anguish from inside the bag. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check
So I think that I gotta give this one massive points for creativity. And I do think that if I saw this, I would be definitely very alarmed and uncomfortable. But overall, this kind of suffers from some of the same drawbacks as the hanged man, in that it's kind of trapped in a body bag, so you know that it can't really get to you. And also it's it's not even as shocking as the body bag, because it just it doesn't suddenly appear. It's there, and then it kind of slowly builds in terms of its moaning and writhing around. So again, I would give this probably a C tier. I think it's creative. I really like the concept. And I'm sure that if you have this, it's not a pleasant thing to witness. But I don't think that it's that scary, necessarily.
The crib is a sleep paralysis demon commonly seen by those who have a newborn baby. They might awake in sleep paralysis to see a crib at the foot of their bed or off to the side in their room. You can't see into it. Sometimes it's rocking and other times it's stationary. But as the duration of the paralysis plays out, horrible crying, screaming, and demonic noises emanate from inside the crib. These blood-curdling screams will dissipate quickly as the sleep paralysis ends, however. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Alright, so I think you know what I'm going to say about this one. It's really just an auditory hallucination. The crib maybe rocks in some cases, and in other cases there it is. And it is a bit alarming just to, I guess, to have a kind of a mysterious crib in your room. But overall, I don't think this is that scary. I would probably give this a D tier.
You awake in sleep paralysis. The smell of smoke and charred flesh fills your nostrils. A smoldering, contorted human crawls out of the floor of your bedroom. It's clear that they've been burning. It crawls up your bed and presses its face against yours and begins to suck out your soul. This sleep paralysis demon is known as the Damned. It's thought to be the soul of someone burning in hell, trying to trade places with you. Best hope you break out of the sleep paralysis before the soul transfer is complete. For more nightmares and scary...
So, to me, this is a very scary sleep paralysis demon. It's got a lot of components, right? It's got the direct interaction with you. It's got the sensation of getting your soul sucked out through your mouth like a dementor, right? And it also has... I guess it doesn't directly harm you. It just kind of crawls across your body. But it has olfactory hallucination. So you actually smell burnt flesh. So there's that extra bit of unpleasantness. And yet, when I compare it to things like the Man in the Hat and the Old Hag, it just doesn't hit as hard. Somehow it just doesn't scare me quite that much. But I would probably put it in A tier, the Damned. I think that's where it belongs.
Another sleep paralysis demon that you can never fully see is called tentacles. They usually emerge when you already hallucinate a fog rolling through your room. They flop up the side of your bed and you can't see where they're coming from. They gradually creep across your body and you can feel the suction cups on your skin. Over time, they apply more and more pressure, crushing you. They feel cold and clammy, and you can often hear a gurgling noise in the air, sometimes from another room and sometimes from your closet. At times, rather than wrap all the way around your body, they'll grab onto your leg and start to drag you out of bed, towards the closet or towards the door. For more nightmares and Scariest.
Okay, so this is kind of interesting. I think especially if you get that last kinesthetic part where you have the sensation of being dragged out of bed, that's really freaky. But the fact that, again, somehow the humanoid ones to me have to take the highest priority because they have an extra air of intelligence to them. But I do think this is scary, and I do think it's creative. I don't think it's that scary, though, compared to some of the ones in the A tier list. I think I would probably put this as a B tier. Very interesting, creative, as I said, and the kind of the smell in the air. You've got some of those atmospheric components like a mist rolling by. And again, if you get the feeling of being pulled out of bed by it, I think that would really make it jump up a notch. I do think it's scarier than some of the ones in the C tier.
You wake up in your room, but you don't immediately see a demon. The walls, ceiling, and floor of your room slowly start to collapse in on themselves. They continue to close around you until you're in a tight little coffin. There is no room, and you can barely breathe. That's when you'll feel a presence behind you. You can't look at it, of course, being paralyzed, but it's there. Its breath is cold. You can feel it. Sometimes a voice will speak from behind you, as though your bed itself is alive, but you know it's not your bed. It's whoever you're sharing your coffin with for the rest of your days. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Alright, a little bit poetic there. So the hallucination of having your walls close in on you, I mean, that sensation of claustrophobia, that would really do it for me in terms of how terrifying it is. And then at the end, like, just to add on top of it, there's someone behind you in your coffin and you're paralyzed and they whisper to you. So that's pretty bad. Does it belong in A or B? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Something about it tells me that it belongs in B. Again, just because, like, you can't see the human element. And again, feel free to disagree if you think that this doesn't belong in B. But yeah, I like it. Like, you can't see the human element. Maybe if it appeared on top of you when you were in your coffin already, or there was, you're in like a pile of corpses. I would say it's very close to being an A tier, though. It gets very close to that.
The Mangled Lady is a sleep paralysis demon that moves around your room like every bone in her body is broken. She doesn't attack, but as she watches you, she's constantly moving and will lean over your bed to peer at you more closely. Perhaps the most mellow sleep paralysis.
Not sure what happened to the audio there, but I think that it was just she will lean over your bed to peer at you. So again, this is kind of the extent of the interaction, but it is probably very unpleasant to see. Just someone, completely mangled, looking like they just got out of a car crash, walking around your room, and then just looking down at you. I think that I would actually have to give this one an A tier. Again, it's got the human element, which freaks me out, even though she's not harming you in any way. I think seeing that sight would put me at a greater state of anxiety than some of the last ones we were talking about in the B tier. And also, unlike the hangman, she is free to move, so there's always kind of the threat of violence, or the threat that she might attack you, even if she doesn't.
demon of all. The mangled lady is a sleep paralysis. Perhaps the most mellow sleep paralysis demon of all is known as the knitting woman. She just keeps you company, sits there in her rocking chair and just knits. She's the only sleep paralysis demon that doesn't seem to take any interest in you or watch you. In fact, she's often reported facing away at a slight angle, and you can't really make out anything but the side of her face. And yet, somehow, that almost seems creepier. As you lie there paralyzed, she just rocks and knits. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Yeah, obviously I agree with myself in that video. Just the fact that she isn't interacting with you when all the other sleep paralysis demons do. Like, I feel like that anticipation would really just be, crawling under my skin. Like, why is this person in my room? Why are they just knitting? And they're not even looking at me. So you would almost not even be sure if it was a sleep paralysis demon, because it's so unlike the others, even though it's just an old woman knitting. And again, there's nothing really scary happening, but for some reason, this makes me feel very uneasy. I would have to put this as a B tier, even though there's no overt, horrors happening.
The upside down man is a sleep paralysis. The succubus is a demon that most people are familiar with, but many don't know that it's also a sleep paralysis demon. Similar to the old hag, she climbs atop you as you lay in bed and pushes down on your chest and head, making it hard to breathe. Unlike the old hag, however, she's described as a younger, more attractive woman, with more stereotypical demon-like qualities such as horns, sometimes red skin, and a pointy tail. The succubus may also use her sex appeal to beguile you down darker paths and towards a deeper state of mental dissonance. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
I mean, this can't be ranked very highly, can it? I mean, this is technically supposed to be like a pleasant experience, or described as that. Probably a D tier. Like, this isn't. I don't think that I need to justify that too hard.
The upside down man is a sleep paralysis demon that walks on the ceiling. He stands on the far side of the room at first, and then gradually makes his way over to you. Although most of his body is upside down, his neck cranes up so that his head is looking at you face on. He smiles as he approaches you, and he's just tall enough that when he finally reaches you, his face is pressed snugly up against yours. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check
I like that one. That one really freaked me out, but for some reason a lot of people didn't seem to agree. A tall man, he's so tall that his head is like touching where yours is at your bed level, and he's just grinning at you, and his neck cranes all the way up. I don't know if it's as scary as the A tier, but I would put this in B tier. I think that that's a pretty scary demon.
The Ivory Witch is the tall, thin, female sleep paralysis demon. She's nearly skeletal, with a thin layer of gray skin atop her bones. She normally stands just inside your doorway, with her head almost hitting the ceiling. She has blades on her hands and will sometimes moan like an old woman in pain. Her mouth appears normal, but her eyes have been covered by a strange membrane. Some think it's the wax of a candle that melted atop her head. Others think it's the skin of her forehead itself that melted down over her eyes. She makes a bone-crunching noise as she sways slightly, but she doesn't move much, and it's rare to have her attack you. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Yeah, so this is one that doesn't really attack, and what is imposing about it, though, is the fact that it's blocking your doorway, and it looks quite unusual. Like, it looks like a cultist or something, or some... Again, a witch, which is what it is. But again, I wouldn't put it, just the fact that she doesn't really approach you, I wouldn't put it as an A tier. I would definitely say it's scary, though, and it deserves to be in B tier.
The sleep paralysis demon known as the Doe is a young human woman who wears a decapitated head of a deer as a mask. She points a finger gun at you as you're paralyzed and repeats the phrase, "Die. Die, die." The masked blood.
The last word was die. So the Doe, not particularly scary, I don't think. Although, of course, like if you have it, it's particularly scary. But overall, I would probably put this in C tier. I do think it's more scary than the Crib and the Succubus and the Shadow Gang. But I don't think it's necessarily the most scary experience, other than it's kind of unusual. But I feel like if you were to have it the second time, I would be kind of over it.
Paralysis demon is an inkjet black blob that wears a white porcelain mask of a beautiful woman. The mask has no eyes, however, and it moves around your room watching you. The drawing is a sleep paralysis.
Moves around your room, I think, was the end of that. Again, sorry about the audio. So yeah, as you can see, I kind of included a picture of No Face from Spirited Away, which it reminded me of. Overall, imagining if I were to imagine this blob in my room with the mask of a beautiful woman, I feel like I wouldn't be that afraid. I have to be honest. I would probably put this in C tier. It doesn't really interact with you. It doesn't really have that much of a humanoid element, even though certainly a blob would be unpleasant to look at. But yeah, I think C tier is what I'm feeling.
That looks like a child's scratchy drawing of a person. Although it's cartoonish, it appears superimposed on your real-world room, and its face can distort in creepy ways.
Its face can distort wildly, I think I remember saying. Okay, so the drawing I think I would probably put as a B tier. Like, this is definitely something that's a little scarier, right, than what we just talked about. It would kind of give you this distorted sense of reality as well, because here you are in the real world, and then all of a sudden there's just this creepy drawing like human just in your room staring at you. And again, its face contorts. But I don't think I could put it on the level of some of the ones in A tier even. I don't think it scares me that much.
The man with black eyes is a sleep paralysis demon for whom the whites of his eyes have been completely blacked out. Other variations of this demon include black-eyed children, or even babies. Black-eyed sleep paralysis demons are usually aggressive ones, and they tend to crawl across your bed from the floor before they start choking you. For more nightmares and scary stuff, check out...
Okay, so they do choke you. The fact that they have black eyes doesn't really get me that much, but they are kind of doing the basic things that a sleep paralysis demon would do. Whether it's a man or a child, I don't think would really freak me out anymore. Maybe the children would actually freak me out more than a grown adult man, because that would seem more demonic somehow for there just to be black-eyed children in your room. But I can't really say that I think it's scarier than the Pesadilla or any of the other ones in C tier, so I'd put it in C tier. We have two more, and then I will read some nightmares from Reddit.
The Shy Shadow is a sleep paralysis demon that's a small, timid shadow person, possibly even a child. Other shadow people sleep paralysis demons, like the Hooded Figure, the Man in the Hat, and the Shadow Gang, make no attempt to conceal their presence and are even sometimes overt in their aggression or staring, or even speaking to you. You often won't see the Shy Shadow at first, however. As you lay in your paralysis, you might be looking around the room, only to see him peering out from behind a bookshelf or a chair. When you finally lock eyes with the Shy Shadow, however, he will disappear from view, hiding from you, and may pop up somewhere else in your room. Because of this reason, and because of its small stature, it's hard to get a detailed look at it. For more nightmares and scary stuff.
Okay, so that's kind of a neat idea as well. And again, the stature of it would have to have it lose some points for scariness, but the fact that when you look at it, it kind of hides from you. That I don't think I would put this in D tier, even though it seems like it's maybe like a more timid one. Shouldn't really be that imposing, not really that scary, but I don't think I would put it in D tier. I think it is actually scarier even than the Shadow Gang, just because it won't let you look at it. There's something that it's trying to hide from you, which is intriguing. Alright, here's the last one.
The Unusual Pair is a duo of sleep paralysis demons that mysteriously always appear to the same individual. One of them is the man wrapped in bloody bandages, and the other is the 10-year-old girl with long black hair who smiles at you. People who see one of these demons will eventually always see the other, but no one knows what the connection between them is. Usually, they don't appear together. You see one night, and then another night. But sometimes they can appear together, holding hands. Hey guys, I'm changing up the content for
Okay.
starting
Yeah, so I think that this concept is really disturbing to me. Just the fact that, whoever sees the little girl with long black hair will also eventually see the bandaged man, and vice versa. And sometimes they appear together. And just the fact that that seems to be a rule that I have, like, people have told me about this. This is where I get this information. That freaks me out. And they like share the experience with each other. And it's a similar thing between them. And what is it, the meaning of that? Like, how come when you see one of these demons, you also tend to always see the other? That really freaks me out. Like, just that element of it, I think it belongs in A tier. But again, they're not interacting with you super overtly or anything like that. So yeah, I don't think it really belongs in S. So the two in S, just to summarize again, are the old hag, just super, historically relevant sleep paralysis demon, as well as the man in the hat, which has just been seen by everyone, and everyone describes the man in the hat as being the most terrifying experience they've ever had. Yeah, and there's my list. Feel free to make your own list. I have a link in the description. And now let me try to figure out how to shut all this down. Oops. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to read some nightmares from Reddit. Perfect. We got through it in OBS. That was my first time doing anything that complicated. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope you all had fun. Let me now get into some of these nightmares. This is a post by a user named Parashilton. I see what you did there. The post is titled, "Demon saying it will destroy me. Woke up in the same position as in my dream." The post reads, "I had a nightmare in which I was laying in bed and was waking up. I was in my own room, in my own bed, laying on my side, and on top of my left hand with the hand sticking out of the side of the bed. Within the nightmare, I wake up and see a demon on the side of my bed, kneeling, so it's on the same level as my head. It was just a black silhouette. Suddenly, it said, 'I will destroy you,' and I woke up right away. However, I was not sure if I was really awake because, 1, within the nightmare, I was also waking up, so it really confused me, and 2, I woke up in the exact same position as in the nightmare. I was laying in the exact same way, and I had the exact same perspective and view of my room. The only thing different was that the demon was gone. I freaked out, and it made me really scared. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. I have never experienced a nightmare that seemed so real. I don't understand how I could have dreamt of myself being in that exact same position as I really was when I woke up." Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how that would lead to a very strong sense of realism within the dream. So just the fact that, so you're there and you're seeing it, although your eyes are closed, and then you open your eyes and the demon's gone, and it feels like you just blinked and missed it. You're not sure whether or not you were really awake or asleep. I mean, that's definitely freaky. What I could say, though, as maybe a bit of a comfort, is your brain would definitely know, even your subconscious brain, what sleeping position you were in, right? Because you do have an inner ear that's telling your brain that you're sleeping on your, left side or right side or whatever it is. I don't know what it could mean. I will destroy you. It almost seems like it belongs in a movie. Like, it's just so perfectly horrifying. And I definitely don't envy you for having had that nightmare. And the fact that you were also waking up in the nightmare just adds just yet another sense of realism to it. That's really nasty. I really wouldn't wish a nightmare like that on anyone. This is a post by a user named BetterMe0. The post is titled, I just woke up from my worst nightmare ever and I can't stop crying. The post reads, I dreamt that from some reason I had to kill someone by slitting his throat with a knife. Once I'm about to do it, it's my little brother who's only 3 years old, but it's too late. I start bawling my eyes out and he bleeds in front of me. He just hugs me and says, It's okay, dear, don't cry. Just give me some water. And then he dies. I don't know why I dreamt this, but I can't stop crying. Well, as I see it, there are a couple possible interpretations for why you had this nightmare. The first is that you are just having protective feelings for your brother, or you are concerned that maybe you haven't seen him in a while, you haven't really checked up on him, and you want to make sure that you know he's doing well. And another possible interpretation is that you experienced maybe a feeling of guilt that you were willing to do something to someone, that when you kind of imagine somebody doing that to your brother, that makes you realize, oh, that's not a good thing to do to someone, that type of thing, right? So it could be a feeling of guilt. And it could also be a feeling of guilt for something that you did do to your brother, I guess, as a third interpretation. So it could be that maybe you wronged your brother in somehow, obviously in a way that was not nearly as intense as what we're seeing in this nightmare, but some other minor way, and in your subconscious it's not sitting right with you internally, and so you're having a nightmare about it. It's coming up as kind of a more extreme version. It's weird to wake up and not be able to distinguish between your dream and reality. Yeah, for sure. That's like confusional arousal, I think, is what that's known as. Or yeah, I think I did a whole episode actually on mistaking dreams and reality, and that's not a good feeling. I agree. I've experienced that before as well, but not quite as intense as that demonic episode. This is a post by a user named Quinny is Leaving. The post is titled, Hit the Nail on the Head. The post reads, I'm back in my mother and stepfather's house. She's in the living room, telling me how disappointed she is, listing everything I failed as fast as possible. My little brother is there, laughing. I slam the door and get in my car. It's raining. The water is leaking through and I'm getting wet. I can't find my cigs. I scream in frustration. I can't turn my head, and the gear shift is attached to my leg instead of the console, so I back out the wrong way and start driving further into the forest. It's raining harder, the roads are flooding, and then the turns aren't going anywhere. I'm being chased. I drive as fast as I can in my broken car, propelled by fear and confusion. The road turns to gravel, and I'm sinking. My tires spin. The last thing I remember is the sensation of drowning and freezing to death at the same time. Dreams like this exacerbate me. It's exactly how I view the quality of my short adult life. Jeez. There's definitely a lot of points here that I can touch on in terms of sort of common interpretations of nightmares, which I listed here on what I call my dream chart. So the first thing is drowning. So we can look at that about midway in the list. A nightmare about drowning indicates that you're overwhelmed with emotion or you're repressing desires or thoughts. In this case, I think it would definitely be related to drowning in emotion. Now, you also said that you had the sensation of freezing when you died. So a dream where you're being frozen either with cold or just frozen in place bodily for whatever reason, that would fall probably under the category of a being unable to move dream. So it means that you feel stuck in some situation in real life, or there's something about yourself that you're suppressing. So if we compare this to your scenario where you're mentioning that you've had to move kind of back in with your parents, I think that that's pretty self-evident where that feeling is coming from, right? So you feel maybe trapped with your parents' house, you feel emotional about it, and especially you kind of told us earlier on in the nightmare that your mother is kind of going through and just listing all your flaws. And you said that, the way you said that made me think that that probably also is taking place in the real world. So it's no wonder that you had a nightmare like this, to be honest. Oh, and then the last thing that I can interpret here is being chased. So a nightmare where you're being chased, this is also sort of near the middle, but a bit up. A nightmare where you're being chased indicates that you're avoiding some confrontation in real life with another person or situation. So I would say overall this is pretty easy to interpret. It's a nightmare about you not wanting to stand up to your mom, not wanting to, or being unable to in some form or another, and you just feel like you're trapped in the house with her there. You can't really fight back, and you're just really upset about the whole thing. So pretty self-explanatory dream. Makes me seem really smart when I have just these charts that describe perfectly what you seem to be experiencing. But hope that you got something out of that interpretation. This is a post by a user named Repulsive Garden 3311. The post is titled Sleep Paralysis That Coincided with a Nightmare. The post reads, "Hello folks, this is my first post here, but I've been a lurker for a bit. Yesterday, after a night of getting no sleep, I went into work, where I fell asleep and had the following nightmare. I'm driving in the parking lot of my old high school. My high school shares the parking lot with a local community pool. It's incredibly busy, with parents taking their kids in for swimming lessons. Suddenly, time slows down, and I feel my body seize up. In my dream and outside of it, my foot presses down on the gas pedal and I start mowing down families, all in slow motion. I'm seeing families I know. I'm fighting to wake up, and I find myself halfway awake and halfway asleep. The hypnagogic state is what that's called. I cannot move, and my eyes are closed. I see a version of myself when I was a kid directly in front of the car, and the nightmare slows down more. I'm trying to move desperately to wake myself up. I am finally able to shake my right foot rapidly, and that opens my eyes and ends the dream. After I was severely disoriented and I could barely stand, I was exhausted, and then, when I went in and out of sleep for a period of 2 hours, where I would have 10-minute time frames where I was half asleep and half dreaming. The nightmare itself was terrifying. The rest was disorienting and felt incredibly weird. Has anyone else experienced this half asleep, half awake feeling?" Well, I haven't experienced it too much, but I do know that that is pretty much the hypnagogic state. So that is when you're training yourself to lucid dream, this is one of the things that you'll be in. So you kind of are halfway between dreaming and sleeping, and you're training yourself to kind of fall asleep while maintaining some form of consciousness. And what will happen is you can actually train yourself to go into sleep paralysis. And sleep paralysis, by the way, also is part of the hypnagogic state. So what happens, just for a brief recap for people who are new, the way sleep paralysis works is in REM sleep, when you normally dream, your body puts GABA, uses GABA and some other thing, acetylcholine or something like that, to shut down the motor neurons. The axons can't fire, so you become paralyzed. And the reason that your body does this is to protect you from your own dreams. Because if you were to act them all out, as people with sleepwalking do, then you can often find that you get injured. And people with night terrors often will get injured because they're having those dreams in deep sleep when atonia is not active. So, a little bit of a recap. And now I forget where I was going with that. Sorry. Where was I going with that? So, right. Oh yeah. Just this person is experiencing, after a really, what you experienced was a lucid nightmare, right? Because you were aware that it was a nightmare, but you weren't able to wake yourself up from it, no matter how hard you tried. So then I think that because you were just fighting through the nightmare so hard, and your brain, part of your subconscious really wanted to sleep, and you kind of forced yourself into a hypnagogic state, which is actually really interesting. I've not really heard too much of that happening from sleep. You hear about people forcing themselves into a hypnagogic state from wakefulness. So that's kind of unique, but I suppose that it makes sense that you could do it from either side. And again, like, I can't really blame you. I'm trying to think of a solution. Like, I could tell you maybe just try to let the nightmare play out next time, because then you won't be forcing yourself awake and you won't end up in a hypnagogic state, but then you have to endure the nightmare. So it's hard to say whether or not you really did the right thing and what you should try next time. But I would say that if it becomes a recurring thing, try something new. That's all I would really say there. This is a post by a user named whateverbest. The post is titled Liminal, Unsettling Nightmare. The post reads, "First time poster here. I have about 1,000,000 nightmares to tell, but I'll start with one I had last night. I was asleep no longer than 5 minutes, so my dream was I was working, I think in what seemed to be a nursing home. It was oddly empty. I thought I was alone, but there was 50 to 60-year-old woman in scrubs there with me. I didn't recognize her at all. The space was uncomfortably empty and quiet, the room filled with what I could only describe as electricity. It felt like the air was comprised of a thick, dense static, almost magnetic. I could feel it in my whole body, especially my face and arms. This tingling, hairs standing up, unsettling. The humming sound of fluorescent lights slowly got louder, accompanied by a high-pitched knife-on-glass type sound. Ear-piercing. It got louder and louder until I felt like my eardrums would rupture. The room felt like it was vibrating. I slowly shifted my vision to my co-worker. She was frozen in terror and mouthed the words, "What's happening to us?" I could barely hear her. She looked mortified. It sends chills down my spine thinking about it. I looked back down the hall and suddenly woke up in a cold sweat. My limbs still felt numb, and my heart was beating out of my chest. I can't explain how terrifyingly vague the whole dream was. I wish I knew what was going on. I've never felt so uncomfy, and I haven't been able to get it out of my head all day. You know, often when there's a nightmare like this where you're experiencing some very specific physical sensation, it could be caused by something in the real world. But again, the only thing I can really think of that would cause the sensation is static. So, I don't know, maybe you have a cat or something and it was, brushing up against your blankets and they built up a static charge and then you felt that and then you had a nightmare about it. Could be something like that. Or for whatever reason there was just a lot of static in your sheets. Maybe it's dry where you are. That, I think, could probably account for why you had the nightmare. Now, as to why, the way that you said it's taking place in a nursing home makes me think that you don't work in a nursing home, but maybe you do. That would explain why it's there. If you don't, then I have no idea why it happened in a nursing home, and I have no idea who the coworker is supposed to represent. Maybe it's someone coming in, maybe it's a shared nightmare. Maybe this is an individual in the real world who had that nightmare alongside you for whatever reason. We may never know. It's very mysterious, though, and I enjoyed reading it. This is a post by a user named JC the Otaku. The post is titled, "I swear I had a nightmare where I saw real dead people." The post reads, "Now if you ask just about anyone who knows me, they could probably tell you that I'm not religious. Not in the slightest bit. I've never really believed in the supernatural. I've never really believed in any gods or the devil. I've always just believed that at the end it's just that, the end. However, a couple months back, I'd say about 3 to 4 months, I had a nightmare where I was so convinced, where I was so convinced part of it was physical. This isn't the first time this has happened either. I've had one other occurrence where it felt like it physically affected me, which I'll write about in another post. I could feel myself sinking, slowly being engulfed by something, not being able to breathe, not being able to hear. When I opened my eyes, I was on an elevator going down, but I wasn't alone. I see something in front of me, someone. It looks like a woman. I can see only her hair, but it looks disheveled and dirty. She's not very tall, and her back isn't hunched. It felt as if the woman was no older than 30 years of age. I reached out my hand, but as I was about to tap her on the shoulder, I broke out in a cold sweat with every hair on my body standing up. I slowly lowered my hand, and at the same time, the elevator door opened up. I opened my mouth to make a noise, but heard nothing, felt no vibration. I questioned whether or not I had opened my mouth at all. The woman steps out of the elevator, and I follow behind her, but it's not of my own accord. It feels as if something else is moving my legs. I can't feel the floor or the air. I can't feel anything. It's just the terror that this woman strikes in me. I look around to see that we are in a store, and for some reason, my brother was there at the cashier helping a customer. That's weird. He works at Amazon. We slowly make our way back to the back of the store, where we open and enter a door and begin to fall free into a pitch black nothing, only to fall back into place in the same elevator as before, but this time with not only the same woman as before, but this time a man that felt old. He was hunched over and with a cane. I could still see nothing but his balding head and gray hairs, not his face. He gave off the same feeling as the woman. I was afraid to try to make contact with the man. As the elevator doors opened, we walked through the same store again, only this time it felt desolate and made me uneasy. I looked over to where my brother was before, and I could make him out, but he seemed hunched over, broken and tired. We made our way to the back of the store once again, and I fell into the abyss. This continued to repeat for who knows how long. I lost track. The last thing I remember is the elevator being filled to the brim with everyone, shoulder to shoulder. I was engulfed with a sense of panic and was struggling to breathe. Finally, as the elevator opened, we were no longer in the store. Rather, it was a dark nothingness, with the only light emitted being the light from the elevator. Directly in front of the elevator was a man. This man felt old, very old. I could not see the man, but I saw that he wore a hat which covered his eyes and the rest by darkness. He came closer and wrapped each individual finger slowly around my neck. However, I still couldn't feel it. I lost my ability to even breathe, but I could not feel the man's hand and the tears falling from my eyes. The next thing I knew, I woke up in bed with dry tear trails on my face and sweat covering my entire body. I could feel the imprints of the hand that grabbed my throat. I can't tell if this dream was partially real or what happened to me. Oh wow, there's a lot to say about that one. So first of all, I mean, right at the end there, the man in the hat, I wonder if that's the same guy as the sleep paralysis demon, because I've also heard a lot of people say that they've heard of the man in the hat. I mean, we just had a comment right there saying that they saw him in real life, and I've seen people before mention that they've seen him in dreams as well as in sleep paralysis. But the other themes here, there's kind of a recurring theme of a failure to communicate, which we would classify as a silent scream nightmare. So you can see kind of a quarter of the way from the bottom. You feel like you don't have a voice or you aren't being heard in real life, or you feel helpless or frustrated with some situation. Now, another feature of this dream, seeing the dead, this is third from the top. Seeing dead people that you don't know indicates anxiety or a personal illness. Okay, so I just had a thought, which is you're on this elevator with dead people. And what if in the nightmare you're one of them? I don't know if you had that thought previously, but what if you don't realize that you're dead and you are one of the dead people? And what if, I'm just saying, maybe make a doctor's appointment. Like what if your brain knows that you have some illness? Because your brain obviously is connected to all the parts of your body, and maybe it's attuned to certain things that you are unaware of. So I would say, like, you know, you're among the dead and you're seeing the dead that you don't know. At least, yeah, it didn't indicate that you did know them, so I think that you don't know them. The fact that your brother's there is weird, and I don't really know what to make of that. And you're just on a loop that just descends and descends, and then you start over. You fall into the abyss and you start over on the elevator. I'm not really sure what that could represent, but that's certainly just a really freaky imagery, and I really feel that, like, viscerally somehow. I appreciate that imagery is what I would say. Not really sure what else to make of this nightmare, but like it could be that you maybe have an illness that you're not aware of. If this nightmare interpretation that I did in the past is worth anything, which it isn't, to be honest, but you know, it's fun to pretend. But yeah, like maybe, because yeah, if you see a dead person that you do know, it could indicate that you're struggling with grief. And the fact that your brother's there, like, I don't know if he's supposed to be dead, but it seems like he has a different role in the dream than you and the other dead people. So it feels like the same rules don't apply to him, if you know what I mean. He's maybe just, maybe you feel like he's being there to, like, support you through some, like, terminal illness or something that maybe you do know that you have, or maybe you're afraid that you have a terminal illness. Could be something like that. That would be my interpretation for why you're seeing the unknown dead people. And I have one more nightmare that I wanted to read. And it comes from a user named OKComparison5073. The post is titled, "I, the ghost of an already dead baby, following what is happening to my body." The post reads, "I was already dead, my body being chopped up on a cutting board in a steel container. The container was those types of open-up dollhouses. It was some kind of steel meat market that could be folded and taken away. The cook had messy black hair with a baseball cap on. He had gloves, a bloody jumpsuit with dirty and bloody apron. My soft body was put in a bowl and served to a woman with a dress shirt and pants on. She had black hair and a ponytail braid, strands of hair poking out. She was drooling over my body in the bowl. Before she could eat it, the cook grinded a dog into the bowl and put someone's guts as some kind of appetizer. He stood up and went back to cutting up meat while the girl gobbled down on the large blue bowl of meat." That was metal AF. That was just very gnarly. So I can actually interpret this on my dream chart part 2. So this is a nightmare about cannibalism. And the bottom line, that's like second from the top here. The one doing the cannibalizing is taking too much of the other person's energy. So I don't know if you know who this person with the black braid is in your nightmare, or know who they might represent. But if you imagine that maybe they're someone that you know in real life, maybe they're analogous to someone that you know in real life, and they're eating you, that could mean that you feel like this person in your real life is taking too much of your energy. That's one interpretation. Another is that they have a distasteful amount of power over you, and you're witnessing the cannibalism indicates that you're witnessing power imbalance. So in this case, again, you are the one whose perspective is the person being eaten. So whoever this person might represent, you feel like has an unfair or a grotesque amount of power over you. And it seems that you think that they're just extremely like immoral and power hungry, because they're also then seen eating a dog that gets grinded up into her food as well. And also eating a baby right below this. So eating a baby in a nightmare could indicate that a lot of hard work has gone to waste, or someone else is taking all the credit for it. So this woman could be your boss or something in real life. I don't know. But maybe if it feels like she's got way more power over you because she's eating you in the nightmare. And then also the fact that you're a baby at the time and you're being eaten. So this is kind of like a double interpretation that could indicate maybe whatever you're producing for your company, your boss is taking credit for, and she has too much power over you. That would all fit together very well. Or that you have a waste of your labor, or you're helpless to prevent something. And then the third interpretation for the eating of a baby is just generally the destruction of innocence. But I would go with my first interpretation there. I wonder if this woman with the braid represents your boss or some superior that you feel like is taking too much credit for your work. They don't really deserve to be in the position that they're in. That would be my interpretation for this nightmare, despite not knowing who you are or anything about you. So, take it with a grain of salt. But I hope that you got something out of that interpretation. And I just remembered that I had one more thing to say about the previous nightmare that we read by JC the Otaku. So just if you recall, this was the fellow who experienced going down in an elevator with dead people and then would just kind of fall into the abyss and then repeat that same experience. So at one point he did mention, I remember this while I was reading the other nightmare, that his legs were moving on their own and he didn't feel like he was in control of them. Well, that's actually called Body Moves on Its Own, and I have an entry for that in my dream chart part 2 as well. So that indicates that you feel like you're not living the life you want to live, or you're behaving in a way that is not like you in the waking world. Or your subconscious is trying to justify showing you something that it knows you wouldn't look at without being forced to. So again, the way I would choose to interpret this is that maybe you have some illness that you kind of suspect you might have, or that you suspect you might be at risk for, and you really know that you should be making a doctor's appointment, and then your brain is just kind of like, hey, although it showed it to you in a vague way that also relies on my other interpretation, but maybe it's your brain's way of trying to tell you to make a doctor's appointment, right? I don't know. I'm just, going off on a limb here. If you're new here, I read nightmares every week, and I'm going to be doing that, even more of that. I'm done with presentations now in the future weeks. So if you'd like me to read your nightmare and react to it, interpret it, you can send it as an email to theforgottengrove@gmail.com. Thanks everyone for coming out today. I think this was a really fun episode, and I really appreciate all the support and all the comments in the chat. If you haven't already, feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and come back, watch more of my videos. Come back next week, participate. I love it when the chat's active, and the more the merrier, because I think this is really fun what we have going on here. But that is all for this week, and until next time, embrace the beautiful dark.